In this video, we're talking about how Valve has made it their mission to make the Steam Machine the simplest PC to use ever, and basically also the best couch co-op machine of all time. And for the quick wrap-up story, I want to talk about some new info that came out about the Steam Frame that got me even more excited for it. How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is Deck Ready, my channel all about Steam hardware. I hope you're having a great week playing a ton of video games. I have officially graduated from Dead by Daylight to the Outlast Trials. This game runs phenomenally on the Steam Deck. You can max it out and get a locked 30 FPS, or you can set it to a mix of medium and high and get 45, or you can drop it to low and get to 60 FPS, but I wouldn't do that because the graphics in this game are awesome. It's scary, it's funny, it's better with friends. You should definitely try it out, and you should also subscribe to the channel and set your notifications to all. But with the intro out of the way, let's get into the main topic of today's video, which is Valve's quest to make the Steam Machine the simplest PC you've ever used, and also the ultimate couch co-op machine. I almost got tongue-tied there, but I recovered in the end. You guys saw it happened. So if you've been watching the channel for the past few months, I'm sure you've noticed that the last few Steam Deck updates have included support for random controllers. Like the Razer Kaiju V3 was one that they added support for. They even went out of their way to add support for the Nintendo Switch 2 controller, which was a lockdown controller. Nintendo is using some sort of demon magic to keep their Bluetooth codec locked down to that controller, so you can use it with the Steam Deck and eventually the Steam Machine, but you'll have to keep it wired to your console. So like using that with the Steam Deck, not necessarily the smartest or easiest thing in the world, because you don't want to keep a wired controller to a handheld. Even if it's in a stand, that's going to be a little weird because you'll have to use a long enough cable to kind of loop it around the back of the Steam Deck and then forward to the controller, or it'll just be hanging in front of your screen, so that wouldn't be optimal. But if you're someone who has a Nintendo Switch 2 controller, you're going to be able to use it on the couch. You'll just need a really long USB-C cable. They've added in support for Joy-Cons as one controller. They've added in support for literally every 8-bit Do controller under the sun. They even add support for new controllers before they officially ship, and there's a reason for that. They're really setting out to make sure that if you want to use a controller that isn't the Steam controller with your Steam Machine, it's going to work right out of the box with your Steam Machine, no questions asked. And they've even taken it one step further with the latest Steam Deck update by adding in the ability for the Steam Machine or the Steam Deck to immediately detect what controller is connected. So the way it worked before is when you wirelessly connected a controller to the Steam Deck or eventually the Steam Machine, it would show the glyphs for the Steam controller or the Steam Deck's controls, and then when you hit a button on that controller, a second later it would update across the board throughout SteamOS to show the right glyphs for that controller. And they have glyphs for everything. Like 8-bit Do, they have their weird star center button in the SteamOS files, so when you connect an 8-bit Do controller, you'll see the correct buttons. They have the PlayStation buttons, they have the Nintendo buttons. Even if you're using a wireless GameCube controller, you will see the correct button glyphs, and now the second you connect a controller is when you'll see those glyphs show up. So it's an instant connection that lets the Steam Deck or Steam Machine eventually kind of reformat itself based on what controller you're using. Now, me personally, I'm using the Steam controller all the time on this thing. That is going to be the main controller I use with the Steam Machine. It's going to be the main controller I use with my desktop PC. It's going to be the main controller I use with any device that it lets me use it on, because it just looks like the perfect controller for me. But there's an extra level to this that's essentially getting it ready for two things. The first one is emulation. I think the Steam Machine is going to be the ultimate emulation device. It should be powerful enough, of course, to play everything from the Super Nintendo all the way up to the original Xbox and the PlayStation 2. But unlike the Steam Deck, I think this thing's going to be prime for emulating through Xenia, the 360, or RCPS3 for the PlayStation 3. Like, I know it's not the strongest device in the world, but those consoles are basically 20 years old at this point. So with this new hardware that they're shipping with the Steam Machine, even with the whole extra performance hit that you take from emulating those newer consoles, I feel like it's going to be just fine to emulate those newer machines on the Steam Machine. And I think it's going to be extra cool for those two emulators specifically, because for really the first time, there's going to be a massive group of people all gaming on the exact same hardware. So there's going to be an incentive for the people who work on RCPS3 and Xenia to really target the performance of the Steam Machine and maybe make some boutique upgrades to make sure that it can interface with that hardware directly, which will result hopefully in good performance across the board in the 70% or so of games that work on the PS3 through that emulator. And I think they're up even higher on the 360. I'm not sure. I don't emulate 360. I just want to emulate PS3 games because Sony refuses to add PS3 support to the PlayStation 5. And the coolest part is the awesome emulation of the Steam Machine is going to go hand in hand with these controller upgrades Valve has been doing over the past year or so. So if you're playing a game from the Nintendo Wii, you'll be able to hopefully connect a Wii controller to the Steam machine, get all the glyphs to show up correctly, and use it as if it's a Nintendo Wii. Or if you're playing like me right now, Resident Evil Outbreak File 1 or 2, you could connect a DualShock 3 from the PS3 era because that has Bluetooth, and you'd have a wireless DualShock controller to play PS2 games with as if it was original hardware. I'm not saying I would do this, but if you're emulating a Switch game, you could connect the Nintendo Switch 1 Pro controller and get those glyphs to line up exactly right with the game you're playing. So you're going to be able to play as if you're on original hardware, but it's going to be supercharged because you're going to be able to upscale the games to a 4K TV, which looks amazing. I've done that on my SteamOS PC already. And even with games like Resident Evil Outbreak, there's a mod out there that's super easy to install on the PS2 version that reactivates the multiplayer in that game. Because if you didn't know, the big selling point of Resident Evil Outbreak File 1 and 2 was that they weren't traditional story-driven survival horror games like the Resident Evils that came before. They were very multiplayer centric. So you'll be able to reactivate that and get the experience of playing that game multiplayer on the PS2 on a modern PC, which is amazing. And the second sort of revolution that comes from combining emulation with controller support is the ultimate couch co-op machine. Like, you could have your friends over to play Fusion Frenzy, and you could connect an Xbox controller, a Switch controller, a PS5 controller, and of course the Steam controller. And because it has that awesome Bluetooth radio built in, it's going to be able to accept all four of those connections without interference, and the connection will stay strong even if people are walking in front of each other or sitting far away from the TV on your couch or standing behind it or something like that. So there's hardware working with software to make it a really good couch co-op machine. You could play Mario Kart 4 player, you could do whatever you want and use whatever controller you want, and it's going to work out just fine. I don't think enough people are talking about how freaking cool this is, and the best part about all of this is that it's dead simple. It's easy as hell to connect a controller to SteamOS. You just put it in Bluetooth pairing mode, you go to SteamOS's settings, you scroll down to Bluetooth, it shows up as the exact controller it is, you tap A on it or click on it, bam, it's connected in a matter of seconds. It connects faster to my Steam Deck and my SteamOS PC than it does my Windows PC with a 5080 in it, which is absolutely nuts. And it's a really cool move from an affordability standpoint. Like, it's a little bit clairvoyant on Valve's part. Like, I don't think they saw these memory shortages and price increases on components coming, because they would have probably announced this thing a lot sooner, or maybe even held off on announcing it until this stuff was resolved. But if you want to get in at the dirt cheapest level, you could just buy the Steam machine without the Steam controller and use one of the many console controllers you probably have laying around your house as the main controller for this device. I mean, you probably also have a USB keyboard and mouse. You could use that as well, or a wireless one. It's basically just built to use stuff you have already lying around your house, which is so cool, because what other console does that? Like, the Switch 2 locks down its controller's Bluetooth so that you can't use it on your PC, which is just insane. Like, what reason is there for that other than to just nickel and dime people and force them to use it with one console? Like, I paid $75 for that controller. I should be able to use it on any device I want, but I'll settle for the Steam machine at the end of the day. I love stuff like this because it's Valve going out of their way to do extra work to make the experience of using their hardware better. They've been doing it for 4 years now with the Steam Deck, and I'm really happy to see that it's just going to continue with the Steam machine. And that kind of brings us into the quick wrap-up news story, which is about the Steam Frame. So the Steam Frame is a really interesting device because it uses an ARM chip, right? Like, on its face, that's a really cool advancement for the Steam hardware platform as a whole, but that introduces a lot of roadblocks when it comes to running games. So Valve went on the back end of Steam and basically laid out all the different ways you're going to be able to play games. And the reason they wanted to do it is because they wanted to make it simple for you to play any game you want on the Steam Frame, but they also wanted to make it simpler for developers to only work on one version of a game and just rely on it working out of the box on the Steam Frame. So this one's kind of interesting because Proton is still going to be the translation layer for Windows games, even though it's an ARM chip. So that would cover, regular Steam games, not VR games that were built specifically for MetaQuest or anything like that. So if you wanted to play Hades 2 or Zombieville USA 3D, it's still going to use Proton to translate those Windows programs over to Linux, which is really cool because that will work on anything that uses ARM and can run SteamOS. The second type of game that's going to work on the Steam frame is Android games through Lepton. Now, a lot of the MetaQuest games are Android games because Horizon OS, or whatever Meta calls it these days, is basically their flavor of Android. So that's going to translate all those games up. They won't have to remake their game for Windows or even Linux. It's just going to translate those Android APKs up to Steam frame, Steam OS. But I'm assuming that would work for like sideloading regular Android apps. So if there's a game you like playing on your Android phone, that should work just fine on the Steam frame. And also mobile apps should work just fine, like Netflix or YouTube or something like that. I don't really know what the use case is, but I always see people being really excited that Android games are going to work on Steam now. And then finally, you've got x86 games through FeX. Now, I don't really understand what the difference is between Windows programs and x86 games. I thought they were the same thing, but FeX is what's allowing the Steam frame to kind of translate x86 games over to Steam OS. So essentially the goal with the Steam frame is to make it the Steam Deck for your face. And I did see that Bradley Lynch tweeted that in the back end of Steam, it looks like they're already teasing a plug-in module for color pass-through. So if you're really not happy that the pass-through on this thing is black and white, it looks like there's going to be a first-party tool that you can just slot into the modular slots on this thing and get color pass-through if you want it. And of course, that's going to help them bring the price down by making it modular. So you can buy the base unit and then build onto it from there based on your specific needs, which is awesome. As long as they nail the price, I think this thing's going to be a sleeper hit when it comes out. Like, I'm buying it either way. I'm just excited about new Valve hardware, but the whole idea of connecting it to my main Windows PC with that adapter or connecting it to my Steam machine and then being able to also just slot in an SD card and play lighter indie games on it sounds excellent to me. I'm just really curious where the performance cap is. Like, the chip in it is really strong, but you obviously have to throttle it a little bit because it's going in something that sits on your face and you don't want it heating up the space in between your eyes and the glass. So I'm sure it'll be throttled just a little bit or run at lower wattages to make up for that fact. But this thing could be cool for emulating. This thing could be cool for games from the PS3 and Xbox 360 era. We don't know because Valve hasn't showed off actual gameplay of it. I really hope that once they announce the release date and the price, they show off gameplay for both the Steam machine and the Steam frame, because I don't think they would sell something that's really underperforming, but you know, it's good to have that info out there. At least they should invite back some YouTubers to test out some actual games on it and get some performance metrics like Digital Foundry or Linus or something like that, or me. I'd go out and check it out gladly, Valve, if you're watching this video. But yeah, I'm really excited for the Steam frame, and it's cool that it'll basically run any game you throw at it. And I'm sure that, you know, the performance will be good out of the box, but just like with the Steam Deck, it'll just continue to get better over time. But yeah, that about brings me to the end of the video. Once again, massive shout out and thank you to you guys for not only getting me to 100,000 subscribers, but, you know, being so nice in the comments. I got hundreds of comments saying congrats on 100K. And the fact that you took the time out of your day to do that really was noticed and goes a long way. I try to answer all of them, but there's just so many. You guys really overloaded me with congrats comments. So this is me saying thank you to everyone. If I didn't see your comment, I apologize, but I only got so much time in the day. I got to make these videos and keep pumping them out. So this is a massive thank you to you, the best person in the world, for subscribing to this channel, continuing to come back and watch the videos, and be nice enough to congratulate me on hitting 100K. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you in today's video. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.